Hi, my name's Bev Ferris and I'm the editor of the Business Travel magazine. And today I'm doing a podcast from a very special place. We are actually out in Benidorm for the Advantage Travel Partnerships Conference. It's the first day today, and I'm delighted to welcome Guy Snelgar, who is Global Business Travel Director. He's sitting here right next to me. There he is. And I am going to do something slightly different with Guy today, because I'm going to just pass him a piece of paper with a word on it, a bit like Mock the Week or Would I Lie to You kind of thing. And he's just going to talk about that particular thing for a short time. And hopefully he'll be able to share some of his insights with you on these important topics. So thank you very much for doing this, Guy. He has no idea what's on these bits of paper, but I'm sure he'll do a great job. So here we go. First one, over to you.
Oh, NDC. That's a good one to start with, isn't it? What hasn't been said already? I think this year is going to be a fundamental shift in the conversation around NDC. There's a couple of things. One, the usage of it and the availability of it and the platforms that it's coming through are going to mean that it's more widely available. But also, I think there is now a more pragmatic conversation. I think there's a recognition that it is here to stay. It does offer a lot of good new things in terms of the way that products can be retailed. But at the moment, there are some operational challenges with how it works. And actually having a sensible conversation between corporate buyers, travel management companies, and the airlines about understanding what can be done and what can't be done with NDC, and what that then means to knock on to servicing levels and potentially the amount of work and fees that are involved. There's a bit more of a grown-up conversation, I think, happening about that as we work through it, because there's going to be a little bit of pain to work through, but it's taking us to a better place somewhere down the line.
Lovely. Number two.
AI and ChatGPT. This is certainly a flavour of the month, I think, in terms of media coverage, not just in the travel space, but everywhere. It's clearly a very significant shift forwards in technology. Personally, my view is, I think some of the slightly apocalyptic predictions that, we're all going to be served by robot travel agents in the not too distant future, and that the human element is going to be wiped out, I don't subscribe to that. I think AI has a huge amount of value it can offer, actually improving the way that technology already works. So making the technology more intuitive, being able to learn people's preferences, being able to interpret trends in data quicker and more accurately, and picking up more detailed nuances. So it has a big role to play, I think, in the way that technology works. But personally, I still think that where the human element in travel management in particular, adds so much value today, I don't think that's going to change. I think that human interaction, we're still dealing about moving people from one place to another. And the things that work well with technology now will work even better as AI starts to come into that technology. But the bits that the humans do very well, I think still have going to be here for a long time to come. Pricing, another broad one. Pricing is tricky in that I still don't think we've necessarily found the level. Obviously, coming out of the pandemic, there were so many challenges around capacity that pricing went through the roof, and we're still seeing very, very high pricing on both airfares and accommodation in particular. As the capacities now come back, and we're hearing from airlines that sort of by, in some cases, third or fourth quarter this year, a lot of the airlines expect to be back to full levels of capacity. I think that's where we're going to get a more accurate picture of where pricing is. Obviously, pricing of everything's going up. Inflation and the credit crunch and all of the costs and staffing costs and so on mean that prices are going to be higher for the foreseeable future. But exactly how much higher and how that's going to settle down towards the back end of that year, I think, is probably still something that we're waiting to find out.
Another tricky one.
Brexit. Okay. I think this is one that hasn't really bitten yet quite as hard as it might have done for business travel. I think the challenges around a lot of the new visa laws in Europe, understanding the different criteria of why you're going to a different country, the nature of the business that you're traveling for and how you're being paid for it, and therefore what kind of visa you might or might not require, and the variations from each country. Because of the delays in travel, because of the pandemic, it all feels like that's kind of concertinaed along a little bit, and we're only now starting to really get our heads around what that means. We've had some other stuff to deal with for the last couple of years, whereas I think this is going to be the hot topic possibly going forward for the next 12 months for a lot of companies, where they really understand exactly what their travellers need to know and need to prepare and have ready for business travel. So it's one that I don't think we've got all the answers to yet, because I don't think a lot of countries have got the answers to yet. I think they're also still finding their feet. So it's a bit of a mess at the moment, if I'm honest. And I think probably in the second half of this year, we're going to see a lot more discussion about that. TMC service levels. So I think this one, obviously coming out through last year with all of the disruption, it was a bit of a perfect storm. We're coming out of the pandemic. We've got very low staffing levels, people trying to rebuild businesses, and then huge amounts of disruption, unprecedented levels of disruption and flight cancellations. It was inevitable that service levels were going to be hit very hard. Talking to members now, we're now seeing that actually for most of them, they're saying that the service levels are certainly nowhere near the challenge that they were before. Service levels are always an important topic, and there are always going to be requirements to push those service levels and make sure people are getting what it is they've signed up for and what it is they're expecting. I think there is a conversation. We talked about kind of NDC and some of the content fragmentation issues, and that is infecting service levels as well, because if things take a bit longer to do, that impacts on the service levels. So I think there is more of a conversation going on now where people are understanding what are the things that actually do require more work and more service and more resource to do, and what are the things that can be done more quickly, whether that be online or through technology. So when I talk to corporates now, most of them say that maybe they're not exactly where they'd like them to be, but certainly they're a lot better than they were last year, and in a lot of cases they're actually in a good place now. But there's probably more of a conversation to see actually what does the service level, what should the service level look like going forward. And I think people looking at RFPs and talking to TMCs now, talking more about what the new service level model should be, rather than necessarily trying to hark back to maybe something pre-pandemic. Sustainability. It's something that everyone seems to talk about, and everyone seems to have an objective and a priority around it. I don't think yet we're seeing it wash out in terms of what that actually means, in terms of actual travel patterns and people's behaviour. I think a lot of organisations, and actually Advantage, I think, is one that we have the same thing. The more you look at it, the more complex it gets, and the deeper you go into your business, because it is something, it's not just about travel, it's something that goes right across business. And I think a lot of organisations I talk to, they started off looking at it in fairly simple terms, and as they dive into it, it becomes more complicated. And the more complicated it gets, the more stakeholders you need to get involved in the discussion, and the bigger it becomes. And so we're kind of sort of almost a year on now from starting some of those discussions. And what we've done is we've made the conversation bigger and more complex, and it's taking longer to work out the answers. So I think there's actually a danger that in trying to get perfect, we're being slow to do anything. In some cases. So I think my view is that what I like to see is we actually do what you can now. There are things you can put in place now. There are simple steps people can put in place in terms of travel policies and the way they work with their TMCs now. They won't answer everything. The data might not be 100% perfect. It might not tackle every possible eventuality of travel, but do what you can now. Perfect is going to take a long time and a lot of discussion, and I think it's going to be probably a few years before all of us get to kind of where we want to be with it. But there's more that can be done now.
I'm just going to butt in here because it's give a bit of a plug for our latest issue, which is Sustainability Special, and it said exactly that. People are getting confused by not necessarily by the details, and that really those things they can do that are simple that can make a difference now. Okay, we're almost done. Next one. Benidorm. He hasn't been here long, so he probably hasn't got much of an opinion yet.
And it's my first time here. I've managed to work in the travel industry for 35 years, and this is my first time coming to Benidorm. So so far it's been lovely. I've had a lovely lunch with Bev. We've had a lovely time. The sun's been out, and then it rained, and then the sun came out again. So I have to say we're being looked after wonderfully well, aren't we, by the Spanish Tourist Board and the local tourist board here. And we're having a lovely conference. So my experiences of Benidorm are entirely positive.
And leading on to the last one.
My first Advantage conference.
How's it going so far?
It's going really well. It's the first one I've done where I've been advantage.
Yes.
I've
Oh,
been
you
to,
have
I've
been
been,
to
been to many before
okay.
as a supplier.
Right.
Oh, it's
Okay.
much easier as a supplier.
Okay. Yeah.
You
just
show
turn
up,
up
people
and
give you drinks and talk to you about stuff, and you meet colleagues and you have a lovely time, and then you go home. When you're on the other side of the
when
fence,
you're hosting,
it's a little bit more frantic. And I can't claim to have been involved in most of the organising. To be fair, no, it's great. It's one of those. I know from coming to it as a supplier, I always felt it was one of the friendliest, I think, and most inclusive conferences that you come to. It is, and certainly it is, like a lot of travel conferences, it is, while there's a lot of discussion about really important business topics and issues, there's also a chance to catch up with friends and people that you might not have seen since the last one, and that's nice. We had a couple of years of not seeing each other and not being able to get in touch with each other, and I think we're still feeling the love for these kind of things.
And you're going on an e-bike tomorrow because we have the excursions tomorrow afternoon, which are fun.
I will know more about Benidorm tomorrow when I've been around it on an electric bike tour.
I'm going to be kayaking, so yeah.
I know, that's very active.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I know you've got to go and meet some suppliers now.
I have.
So, and I know I'm keeping you from doing that. So off you go. Thank you very much for doing that, for answering those questions. Well, talk about those topics so succinctly and expertly. So thank you very much.